Chair.
I call Claire Curran.
Oh, bugger.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the new Minister in his role as the Minister of Commerce, echo my colleagues' concerns about the place that commerce is now held and viewed by the government as being outside of Cabinet, and also make the comment that I look forward to the agenda, the new agenda that the Commerce Minister is going to announce very soon to the country as to what he has in store in terms of ongoing legislation and the particular stamp that he wants to put on his portfolio. And particular interest is around the necessary reform as called for by the Chair of the Commerce Commission of Section 36 of the Commerce Act, and in the improvement of competition law, and leaving aside the cartels bill that's going to be hitting the House at some point soon, where he wants to take that evolution of competition law next. Very keen to hear the views of the Minister, given that his previous claim to fame has been passing after many, many months of discussion in this House, the august Electronic Transactions Contract Formation Amendment Bill, one of the most, shall we say, meaningless pieces of legislation that I have seen come through this House in the 6 years that I've been here, which tidied up a small area of uncertainty around the point of contract law, around the timing of when a contract is accepted by electronic means. With that summary, I think is basically about all that bill deserved. Just with relation to this bill and the debate around in the committee stage, there's no doubt, first of all, that this was a very cooperative discussion across the House, all parts of the House in the discussion around this bill, and that there was some useful outcomes that came out of the committee stage in changes that were made. As colleagues have mentioned, the most important, the biggest part of this bill that taxed the discussion in the Select Committee was around the religious exemption, and there's no doubt that I think that created some challenges for the officials, and I'd like to acknowledge your role in the whole of this bill, not just that particular part, but that did provide some real challenges, because it actually, leaving aside all hilarity around the particular issue, it actually presented a real moral dilemma for the committee, and I think the officials had to work quite hard to go back and look at precedent around exemption on religious grounds, and I think at one point we heard about the similar provision in the Valuers Act of 1948, which is really going back quite a long way. And I just want to put on record in the House tonight that I still have reservations about the position that we came to. I think it was a fair outcome, but I think I still have reservations around the unintended consequences of that religious exemption of belonging to an accredited body, and the importance of that, and how you can sit outside that body and still perform the functions, and how there can be the necessary scrutiny. And I'd like to hear from the new Minister any views that he'd like to share with us around that. And I just want to quickly mention another matter which did have some discussion by the officials that were brought to us as a result of our submissions, but never actually made it into the bill, and that is around whistleblower provisions. And I just want to briefly inform the House around that BDO New Zealand, which is the accounts and auditors and advisors, noted that due to confidentiality rules, that the auditor cannot share client information unless there's a misstatement resulting from fraud, and they recommended a wider ability for auditors to communicate with the relevant regulator for statutory audits. Now, this is actually quite important, and the committee went away and looked and said that under the Financial Markets Act, auditors must whistleblow in relation to certain financial products. Auditors of issuers, Mr. Chair.
Claire Curran.
Thank you. Auditors of issuers of debt, securities and registered schemes had an obligation to provide information to supervisors, or in certain cases to the FMA if there were reasonable grounds to believe that there was a serious problem with the issuing of issuer or of a scheme. And auditors also have to supply relevant information about issuers to supervisors on request. So that Act does protect auditors against civil, criminal and disciplinary proceedings in relation to disclosures made. And there's also similar provisions for auditors of banks and insurers to report to the Reserve Bank, and obligations for auditors of other companies or corporate entities to provide requested information to the Registrar of Companies. And while there was, while the officials told us that they could see the value of extending whistleblowing protection provisions and protections from liability, there were also obligations that needed to be considered in relation to particular regimes and regulators. They said that that these obligations have got significant consequences for auditors, and their imposition has given rise to concern from auditors in the past. And they said that the International Ethical Standards Board for Accountants' initial proposals on the appropriate extended auditor responsibility for whistleblowing under audit and assurance standards have not been well received because one size doesn't fit all. However, they did say to us that any extension of whistleblowing obligations could be best considered once the outcome of that analysis is known. Now, Mr. Chair, I'd just like the Minister to take note of that. Whistleblowing protections in this country are not that great. They're quite weak generally. Around in this particular area, in financial markets, in the collapse of financial companies, in all of the areas that the Commerce Committee, which with respect the current Minister has not been party to in the last 6 years, that the ability to blow the whistle, so to speak, the ability to reveal information, to bring stuff to the public attention and get it dealt with has been paramount and has underpinned a lot of the legislative changes that have taken place right across the board. And in this particular piece of legislation, this should not go unnoticed, and it should be considered as an ongoing, I guess, issue to be watched. Whistleblowing around practices, whether it's through auditors, accountants, whether it's lawyers, whether it's financial advisors, anybody operating in the financial environment where corporate crime, white-collar crime, is rife and is an issue which I think is we're only scratching the surface of in this country, is something that I would hope that the new Minister in the chair in this position will actually be taking serious account of. There will be further discussion around this bill with the various provisions. I certainly think that there's been a lot of hard work done by the committee. Do want to acknowledge the role played by the chair, Jonathan Young, and other members of the committee and right across the House. I think this is a good piece of legislation. I think there are some issues that still need to be paid attention to. And I do, again, register some unease around the exemption on the basis of religious affiliation for belonging to and for having to belong to an accredited body.
I call